First. It was written by Charles Wesley, who published it in 1739. It had slightly different text. It began, "Hark, how all the welkin rings, glory to the King of Kings." Welkin is archaic English for the word sky or vault of heaven. And this hymn, the text, was published under the heading Hymn for Christmas Day. But the tune was written completely separately from the text by Mendelssohn. He wrote it in 1840 for a secular piece for men's chorus and brass called Festgesang an die Künstler for a Gutenberg festival to celebrate the 400th anniversary of printing. And Mendelssohn said, "This tune will never do to sacred words." Nevertheless, it was paired with Wesley's text in a hymn book published in 1857. So that was a very common thing in the 19th century, to take music from classical composers and pair it with hymn texts that had been written. So it has lived on in spite of Mendelssohn's feelings that it was not a sacred tune. So let's sing it and see for yourself if you feel a sacredness in this tune. We'll do verses 1 and 3. It does feel very celebratory. You can imagine it, right, for a big festival celebrating something like the printing press. All right, next we've got Lo, How a Rose. This is hymn 129. This is a German carol with text and melody both from around the 14th or 15th century. You can see in our image here this beautiful melody in more of kind of a chant notation. So you can see that it's quite old from this manuscript. The text was found in a manuscript from between 1582 and 1588 at St. Alban's Carthusian Monastery in Trier. And it was printed by the end of that century. It included 23 verses. Yeah, so we only have 3 in our hymnal, but there were many, many more. There are various English translations. This is often the case as we've adopted hymns from other languages. And the hymn that's found in our hymnal comes from a composite of a few different translators, and you can see that even listed at the very bottom there. We don't know an exact source of the tune, though its most popular setting was done by Michael Praetorius, who was an admired Reformation-era composer who included this piece in one of his publications in 1609. The rose in this text is a symbolic reference, of course, to the Virgin Mary. And many composers have interpreted this carol in various anthems, including people like Brahms, Disler, Schoenberg, and Jan Sandström, who's a Swedish composer. During the Nazi era, many German Christmas carols were rewritten to promote National Socialist ideology and to excise references to the Jewish origins of Jesus. During Christmas in Nazi Germany, this piece, Es ist ein Ros entsprungen, which is the German, was rewritten as Uns ist ein Licht erstanden in einer dunklen Winternacht, which means a light has arisen for us on a dark winter night, with a secularized text evoking sunlight falling on the fatherland and extolling the virtues of motherhood. Disler, by the way, who is a German composer from that Nazi era, has just a very tragic history of the Nazis wanting to use his music as propaganda, and he ended up killing himself I think he was 30 years old or 32, something like that. So really difficult time, obviously, in many ways, but also musically for composers who were being asked to write for one thing or another. So let us sing, let's do verses 1 and 2, and we have the opportunity to kind of reclaim some of these hymns that had a beautiful origin, were maybe used in negative ways, and we get to say, no, we want to retell the sacred original story of this text. Let's sing verses 1 and 2. Beautiful singing. Okay, next. 'Twas in the moon of wintertime, 142. I was very curious to read about this one. I had heard previously that it had Native American origins, and that was about all that I knew. And that just made me really, really, really curious. Like, how does something Native American end up in a Christian Presbyterian hymnal? So here's what I learned. This is the earliest First Nations Christmas carol and the earliest Canadian hymn that we know about. It can be traced back to Jean de Brébeuf, a French Jesuit priest and missionary who worked among the Canadian Huron people. In 1722, Brébeuf went to Quebec as a missionary, and that would be 1622, because then in 1626, he went by canoe for 800 miles through Huron territory. He returned to France a while later and then came back to the Huron people in 1633. In 1649, as part of an Iroquois massacre that forced the Hurons to leave their territory near Quebec, he was tortured and killed. This hymn would have been taught orally to the native people, passed from generation to generation. And it wasn't until in 1794, more than 150 years after this tune originated, that a priest who worked among the Huron people outside Quebec with the help of a bilingual Huron wrote down all of the hymns and the chants in their oral tradition with French paraphrases. Now this, you can already tell this is going through many filters of people, right? So then Jesse E. Middleton, a journalist from Ontario, saw the carol in a publication in 1899 and wrote a free English version of the text and published it in a little pamphlet. And that is essentially what has come down to us today. But I want to read to you some of the text from the original version, which could not be more different, which is very, very interesting. So the text, here's an English translation of the original text. Have courage, you who are humans. Jesus, he is born. Behold, it has fled, the spirit who had us as prisoner. Do not listen to it as it corrupts our minds, the spirit of our thoughts. They are spirits coming with a message for us, the sky people. They are coming to say, come on, be on top of life, rejoice. Mary has just given birth, come on, rejoice. 3 have left for such a place. They are men of great matter. A star that has just appeared over the horizons leads them there. He will seize the path, a star that leads them there. As they arrived there where he was born, Jesus, the star was at the point of stopping. He was not far past it. Having found someone for them, he says, come here. Behold, they have arrived there and have seen Jesus. They praised a name many times, saying, hooray, he is in good nature. They greeted him with respect, oiling his scalp many times, saying, hooray, we will give to him honor to his name. Let us oil his scalp many times, show reverence for him as he comes to be compassionate with us. It is providential that you love us and think I should make them part of my family. Nothing like 'twas in the moon of winter time when all the birds had fled. So, again, just so important, I think, instead of like, oh, we sang this First Nations hymn, aren't we so cool, to do more of that digging. Every time we dig into something, I think we learn so much. So that's the history of how the text came to us. The tune itself is a traditional French folk song from as early as the 16th century, likely brought by missionaries to North America. And we don't know when the text and the tune were paired, but it's likely that many texts were paired with this familiar French folk tune. Okay, let's go verses 1 and 4. 'Twas in the moon of winter time when all the birds had fled. Great Spirit, Lord of all the earth, sent angel choirs instead. Before thy light the stars grew dim, and wandering hunters heard the hymn. Jesus, your King is born. Jesus is born in excelsis Gloria. Verse 4. O children of the forest free, the angel's song is true. The holy child of earth and heaven is born today for you. Come kneel before the radiant boy who brings you beauty, peace, and joy. Jesus, your King is born. Jesus is born in excelsis Gloria. Thank you. Okay, onward. This is 121, O Little Town of Bethlehem. The text of this hymn was written by Phillips Brooks following a trip he took to Bethlehem. and a service that he attended at the Church of the Nativity there on Christmas Eve in 1865. He completed this text 3 years later for his Sunday school at Holy Trinity Church in Philadelphia for the Christmas Sunday school service that year. The fourth stanza has been omitted from most hymnals. It reads, "Where children pure and happy pray to the blessed child, where misery cries out to thee, Son of the undefiled, where charity stands watching and faith holds wide the door, the dark night wakes, the glory breaks, and Christmas comes once more." The tune was composed specifically for this text by Lewis H. Redner, who wrote the tune at the text writer's request in 1868. Redner was the Sunday school superintendent at that same church, and during his 19 years there, I thought this was interesting, he was given credit for increasing Sunday school attendance from 36 to over 1,000. What a guy. So a fabulous Sunday school superintendent and a musician. And maybe music is the way he did it. I don't know. I'm just going to say. So let's sing. Let's see. Let's do 1 and 4 of this. I know I've read critique of various Christmas carols in the past that are all wintry in their language. You know, the snow has fallen, snow on snow, that kind of a thing, because, of course, in the Middle East, that would not have been the case. And it completely makes sense that every culture would want to reflect themselves in the Christmas story. But it's nice to have a song that has come out of influence from Bethlehem, I think, is really beautiful. And here's a picture there. How many of you have visited Bethlehem? Wow, that's amazing. Not me, but hopefully one day. Let's go on to number 128, Infant Holy, Infant Lowly. This was a really fun one for me to read about. The origins of the Polish text are unknown. Some have presumed it comes from the 13th or 14th centuries, but it first surfaced in English hymnody in 1877. The origins of the tune are also unknown, but here's what I think is really interesting. You can tell that the melody derives from a dance tune called a mazurka. Are there any folks of Polish descent here? Out of curiosity. Okay. So a mazurka is a Polish country dance in the region of Warsaw, and I just have included a picture of kind of folk dancing from that area. The native rhythm of a mazurka is much more hearty and folk-like, and it includes these eighth notes beginning on the downbeat. So instead of infant holy, infant lowly, it would be infant holy, infant lowly, and there's emphasis in a place that is not what we're used to. But it was kind of the reinterpretation of it in the 19th century that added a sentimental filter that removes the song's bite and presumes a slow tempo akin to other hymns from that period. So our emphasis is on a sleeping baby. We've kind of turned it into a lullaby, while the Polish dance leans a little more into the swiftly winging, the bells ringing, and the rejoicing, which fits the character of the tune a little bit more. So I'm going to ask you to play it a little bit more in that character. Yeah, we'll do both verses. Ready? Infant holy, infant lowly, for his birth a cattle stole, oxen lowing, little knowing, Christ the babe is Lord of all. Swift are winging, angels singing, Noel's ringing, tidings bringing, Christ the babe is Lord of all. Christ the babe is Lord of all. Flocks were sleeping, shepherds keeping vigil till the morning new. Saw the glory, heard the story, tidings of the gospel true. Thus rejoicing, free from sorrow, praises voicing, greet the morrow. Christ the babe was born for you. Christ the babe was born for you. Has a different feel, right? Cool. That's so fun. Okay. Number 123, It Came Upon the Midnight Clear. The text of this hymn was written in 1849 by Edmund Sears, pastor of the Unitarian congregation in Wayland, Massachusetts. He wrote this during a period of personal melancholy and also with news of the revolution in Europe and perhaps more significantly, the United States war with Mexico fresh on his mind. And that's what this image is from. It's hard to see, but there's the American flag in this corner and the Mexican flag in the other corner. This concept of war is apparent particularly in verse 3 of this hymn. And the original words are just slightly different than what's in our hymnal, so I'm going to read that for you. Yet with the woes of sin and strife, the world has suffered long. Beneath the angel strain have rolled 2,000 years of wrong. And man at war with man hears not the love song which they bring. Oh, hush the noise, ye men of strife, and hear the angels sing. Although it is one of the best-known Christmas carols, it does not refer to Jesus' birth at all, and instead centers on the message of peace that the angels bring. The tune of this carol was written by Richard S. Willis in 1850 for a different hymn. It wasn't until 1878 that the tune and the text were finally paired. Just to kind of connect back to an earlier person we talked about, the tune writer, Richard Willis, was born in Boston, graduated from Yale, and went to Germany, where he became a student and friend of Felix Mendelssohn, about whom he wrote a biography. So maybe there's a little Mendelssohn influence in this. Let's sing verse 1 and then verse 3. It came upon the midnight clear, that glorious song of old, from angels bending near the earth to touch the harps of gold. His on the earth goodwill to all, from heaven's a gracious King. 2,000 years of wrong. And yet on earth hear not the tidings that they bring. Oh, hush the noise and cease the strife to hear the angels sing. I appreciate some of the text change they made was, you can tell, to get rid of the male language of man at war with man. But what was lost, which I hate, is that it's not, if you look at the bottom line of that first page, we at war on earth hear not the tidings. It was the love song. I just like that. I feel like something's missed when we get rid of the love song that is brought. So, okay, next, you may not be surprised to see this on our list. Silent Night, 122. On Christmas Eve in 1818, the organ was not playable at St. Nikolaus Church in Oberndorf, possibly after river flooding damage. That's in Germany, where Joseph Mohr was the assistant priest. So on Christmas Eve itself, Mohr brought the text to the parish organist, Franz Gruber, and asked him to come up with a tune for it, utilizing two voices, choir, and guitar. Gruber wrote the tune as requested, and the hymn was performed that night with Mohr singing and Gruber accompanying on guitar. It became popular as a Tyrolean folk song. Touring families and soloists sang it, and 20 years later, the text and the tune were published. There's another bit of history connected to this song, which you're likely familiar with through the show All Is Calm, that has been performed for many years at Theater Latte Da, and here's an image from that show. I know Cantus was a major part of the beginnings of this and throughout its history. On Christmas Day of 1914, so this is World War I, Pope Benedict XV called for a Christmas truce. Historians argue about exactly how this went down, but one way or another, Belgian and French soldiers put down their rifles and spent Christmas mingling with their German enemies along the Western Front. It's believed that around 100,000 people took part in this magical moment. Most accounts say that the truce began with carol singing. Here's how one soldier described it, quote, "First the Germans would sing one of their carols, and then we would sing one of ours, until we started up, 'O come all ye faithful.' The Germans immediately joined in singing the same hymn to the Latin words, 'Adeste Fidelis.' And I thought, well, this is really a most extraordinary thing, two nations both singing the same carol in the middle of a war." The Christmas truce also allowed both sides to finally bury their dead comrades, whose bodies had lain for weeks on no man's land, the ground between opposing trenches. The peace did not last, unfortunately. As one veteran said, it was a short peace in a terrible war. Let's sing. I brought my guitar. I thought we have to, right? So let's do verses, let's do 1 and 2. Okay, 1 and 3. Okay, I knew someone would have an opinion. It wasn't me, so it's fine. Okay. Ready? Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child, holy infant so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night, from your holy face, with the dawn of redeeming grace. Jesus, Lord, at your birth. Jesus, Lord, at your birth. Beautifully sung. I can tell you're all like ready for the Christmas Eve service. You sang it with that vibe. It was so beautiful. Okay. All right, this may be a lesser known hymn to you. This is hymn number 139, That Boy Child of Mary. Let's see. Okay. This hymn was written by Thomas S. Colvin, who's pictured here, a minister in the Church of Scotland who served as a missionary in Africa for 26 years. Colvin wrote this text in 1967 for St. Michael's Cathedral in Blantyre, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, in Malawi, and says of it that, quote, "In Africa, generally the name given to a child is very important, expressing often the hopes for the child or the events associated with its birth," end quote. Here we have the name of Jesus described as God with us, gift of God for us, and heaven-sent helper. Colvin adapted a traditional Malawi dance tune for his text, which gives this hymn a folk-like feel. And you likely know Colvin for one of his other hymns, Jesu, Jesu, fill us with your love, which we often sing around Maundy Thursday. Kind of in some ways a similar feel, I think, to this. So let's sing. There's a refrain, right? So we'll do the refrain, verse 1, refrain, verse 2, and then refrain. What shall we call him? Child of the manger. What name is given in Bethlehem? That boy child of Mary was born in a stable, a manger his cradle in Bethlehem. His name is Jesus, God ever with us, God given for us in Bethlehem. That boy child of Mary was born in a stable, a manger his cradle in Bethlehem. Yeah. Beautiful. That's a newer hymn to me. It may be to some of you as well. And speaking of newer hymns, I'd like to teach you one that is not in your hymnal. This is a Mandarin carol, and it is included in many other hymnals, but not in this one. This Mandarin carol is one of the most famous and popular Christmas carols in China. It was written by one of the most prolific Chinese writers, Jingxi Yang. Jingxi Yang. The tune first appeared in a Western source in 1936, and it is by Jifang Liang and is pentatonic. Could you just play a pentatonic scale? So it's a 5-note scale. It's a little bit different than what we have in our ears as our kind of traditional major scale. I've got just 2 slides that I'll go back and forth on this, but I wanted to teach you so that we can have some success. The refrain, which is here at the bottom. Can we just sing that refrain once? I'll sing it once and then you sing it with me. Thank you. Glory be to God on high, blessed are all beneath the sky. Try that. Glory be don't catch on to the other bits, come in for that refrain, but do your best. We're doing it in English, verses 1 and 2. Ready? Midnight stars make bright the skies. Bethlehem in slumber lies. Listening hand sends forth a great light. Shepherds see a wondrous sight. Angel ranks in chorus sing. Silken sounds from heaven ring. Frightened shepherds hear them say, Christ is born on earth today. Glory be to God on high. Blessed are all beneath the sky. Midnight slumber lies o'er all. One lone bright lamp lights the stall. Choose what clothing wrap him warmly. Manger shall his cradle be. Born to save us from our sin, Word made flesh our lives to win. Came to earth from heaven's throne, mortal sin to bear alone. Glory be to God on high. Blessed are all beneath the sky. Good. Yes.
Given the different scale of time, though, would this have been played on a different instrument than the piano?
That's such a It's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I think, having it been, let's see, we don't have a date. Does that have a date at the bottom?
77.
1977. Right. Having been written more as a more contemporary song, I think it's, very likely that it is done with piano, but I think that it certainly could be done with more traditional Chinese instruments. I imagine you would probably hear all kinds of versions of it. It's a great question. Thanks for asking that. I've got 2 more for you. Go Tell It on the Mountain, 136. That pentatonic scale, by the way, it shows up in a variety of cultures. It's not just I think we often think of it primarily as in Asian cultures, but also a lot of African American, like spirituals. Go Tell It on the Mountain is one of them, is either pentatonic or very close to pentatonic. So it is a scale that is in many different places. This, Go Tell It on the Mountain, this is a traditional African-American spiritual, which probably dates from the 19th century. It first appeared in print, excuse me, in 1909 in Nathaniel Dett's publication called Religious Folk Songs of the Negro as Sung on the Plantations. Nathaniel Dett is a prolific African-American composer of choral music and other kinds of music. And this text was published with the heading Christmas Plantation Song. It had different stanzas from what we know and written in an African dialect. I'll read these 2 stanzas to you. So it was, when I was a seeker, might be easier if I sing it. When I was a seeker, I sought both night and day. I asked the Lord to help me, and he showed me the way. And then same Go Tell It on the Mountain chorus. The second stanza references Isaiah 21. The text is, he made me a watchman upon the city wall, and if I am a Christian, I am the least of all. And then it goes on to the chorus. John Wesley Work Jr., another well-known composer, wrote the Christmas stanzas that we know of today around 1925. And they were published in his book a book by his son in 1940 called American Negro Spirit Songs and Spirituals. Work Jr. was born in Nashville, Tennessee, and went to Fisk University, a historically black university, which you may know of, or if you don't, you should, for their famous Fisk Jubilee Singers, and that's what this image is from. This was a choir founded at the university that essentially brought spirituals into the choral genre, took songs that were known as slave songs and put them onto a concert stage. Work Jr. sang with that group and was a part of that movement. He and his brother Frederick Jerome Work collected and arranged spirituals and slave songs, performing them with the Fisk Jubilee Singers and also organizing a Fisk Jubilee Quartet. So let's sing. Let's go 1 and 3 on this as well. Ready? Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. While shepherds kept their watching, or silent flocks by night, behold, throughout the heavens there shone a holy light. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. Down in a lonely manger, the humble Christ was born, and God sent us salvation that blessed Christmas morn. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. Good. Da, 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 da. That same pentatonic 5-note scale there. Okay. All right, one more for us today. This is hymn 132, Good Christian Friends Rejoice. I just thought it would be fun to use this hymn to teach you, it was a new vocabulary word for me. You may already know it. The word macaronic. Do you know what that means? What a macaronic hymn is? No? This morning I was like, is that related to macaroni somehow? And I was just like, what is the etymology? And I was looking. Turns out the Latin of macaroni would have had 2 C's in it, and macaronic is just 1, so I think it's different. Anyway, macaronic hymn is a mixed language hymn, usually with the vernacular language and Latin. So, for example, Angels We Have Heard on High is a French macaronic carol. It was originally in French, but then we get Gloria in excelsis Deo, that Latin phrase, right? So let's see, another good example of that would be On This Day Earth Shall Ring. Macaronic carols, were popularized towards the end of the Middle Ages. So On This Day Earth Shall Ring was originally written fully in Latin in 1582. But when Jane, Mary, and Joseph wrote an English translation around 1900, she kept some of the Latin text, that E Deo, Gloria in excelsis Deo, which means therefore glory to God in the highest. And she kept that Latin text just for the purpose of adding in the antique flavor of the hymn. So that was kind of a hip thing to do. This is, Good Christian Friends Rejoice, is the oldest German macaronic hymn that we know about. And in this case, the vernacular would be the German dialect from the area of Mainz and Worms, mixed with Latin, in dulci jubilo, which you see in this beautiful artwork here. So even though as you're looking in this at your hymnal, you might be saying, well, this isn't macaronic, it's all in English. The original verse would have gone more like this. In dulci jubilo, let us our homage show. Our heart's joy reclineth in presepio, and like a bright star shineth matris in gremio. Alpha essero, alpha essero. So it's going back and forth between English and Latin. There are many, again, choral settings of this today that keep that. So that might not be unfamiliar to you. So let's, and I'm glad nobody cheated. It does define macaronic at the bottom of this hymn here. But thanks for playing along with me. So let's sing, and why don't we stand as you're able, and we'll sing verses 1 and 3. Good Christian friends, rejoice with heart and soul and voice. Give heed to what we say. Jesus Christ is born today. Ox and ass before him bow, and he is in the manger now. Christ is born today. Christ is born today. Verse 3. Good Christian friends, rejoice with heart and soul and voice. Now ye need not fear the grave. Jesus Christ was born to save. Calls you one and calls you all to gain the everlasting hall. Christ was born to save. Christ was born to save. Beautiful singing. Well, thank you. That's what I've prepared for you. You may be seated. And I don't know if there are any questions or if I even could answer any, but I'm certainly happy to hear them if there are any questions. Yeah. Thank you.
I just wanted to comment that I
Yeah.
love the picture of Bethlehem that was in there.
Oh yeah. It's fun. It's nice to get visuals for these hymns, I think, especially for people like me who might be visual learners. Want to say again a special thank you to Melanie for being a part of this today. Good. And if, we only explored things in our hymnal today, but of course all of the secular Christmas songs also have such interesting history. So if you learn about a song, whether in this or somewhere else that we didn't talk about today, that has an interesting history, I'd love for you to share it with me. It would be fun to keep learning. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Could you talk about the Westminster favorite, What a Wonder?
Oh, well, only in that it says on the music that it's a traditional Lithuanian carol, and no one so far has been able to find its origins. So we're all really curious about that. Arranged by Clarence Dickinson, and his wife was also a part of that. And I'm going to have to pull it up. I did write a newsletter article last year a little bit about that. This is an anthem that the choir's been singing for 83, 84 years, something like that, that we'll do on December 19th at the end of the prelude, so don't be late to worship. But yeah, if anyone can find that original Lithuanian carol, that would be really interesting. I think we might have to go to like the Library of Congress or something to do some work on that. Good. Well, thank you for the invitation to be here, and have a wonderful Advent season.
Thank you so much,
Yes.
Amanda. That was wonderful. Are there any other questions for Amanda? Okay. Bob?
With your accomplishments in singing, are you one of these people that does your recorded voice sound the same to you as you hear yourself speaking?
Absolutely not. No, I'm a normal human being like the rest of you. It's terrible to listen to recordings of myself. Yeah, everybody you hear yourself a little differently in your head than you do in a recording. That's just the science of acoustics. So, I hope it sounds better to you than it does to me. That's what I'll say. Yeah.
Sounds wonderful to us.
Well,
or at
that's
least to
very
me.
kind. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions, let's have a moment for Meals on Wheels with Elaine. I don't see, Elaine, are you here? I guess not. Well, we can go back if she does come. She is looking for people who would be interested in doing delivering Meals on Wheels on a Tuesday or Thursday starting the beginning of the year. And I'll let her address you at some point. And our upcoming programs. January 12th, we've got financial planning and your legacy. This is going to be a fantastic program. We've had Chris Mazer in the past, who was very well received. She has retired, but now we have Lauren Fink, who is a partner in the same law firm, and she will be discussing many strategies to consider. She'll also talk about the pros and cons of different strategies, give us some general guidelines, and discuss common mistakes and potential tax traps. So that will be great. That'll be Wednesday, January 12th. Then in February, we'll be discussing the complexity of love. And March 9th, Elena will be here to help us with theological and social aspects of volunteerism. So I hope you all will be able to come for that. And we do not have coffee outside. Decided it's just too cold. But Dwayne, will you? We do have cookies for you to take home. There is no eating in the church, but we hope you will enjoy them. Yes, please stay around and chat. Thank you so much for coming. Bye.